Hello and welcome to the Liverpool.com podcast. I am your host, Mo Stewart, and I'm joined by Bocsak and Keifer Macdonald. Now, for all of you Liverpool fans out there, you'll know that Liverpool just kept on rolling. The momentum is great at the moment. 2 wins this week to take us up to 6 on the bounce as we head into this Champions League clash with Inter Milan. And not only that, we've all been very pleased to see that we've actually got a fully fit squad for the first time since the 2019 Champions League final, which is obviously also a very good day. Now, this is a cause for celebration, but I do feel like we need to get a little bit James Martin about this as well, because with even the best things, there are some bad consequences. Now, the Burnley game's a really good example, Ben. I'll start with you. Curtis Jones and Joe Gomez, 2 players, fantastically talented young English players, considered to be the future of this club still by the coaching staff, couldn't get into the squad against Burnley. Now, we've obviously got an embarrassment of riches. It's a deep squad. It's a good thing. But we've also been a very strong squad in terms of chemistry, team spirit, and we're going to need that going into the run-in. So do you think that this could become a problem if you've got players of that quality who aren't even getting on the bench?
I don't think so, especially in the case of Gomez and Jones. Your context matters in this case. And for example, Jones, he started the last game against Leicester, so he still has opportunities to play. It's not like he's completely, exiled from the team. He is still involved, and I think he'll understand. Maybe Klopp communicated to him that performance against Leicester wasn't quite what he was expecting, and I'm sure he will be involved in the Champions League tie, with the 5 substitutions as well. I'm sure we'll see Jones at some point against Inter Milan. And then with Gomez, he's just coming back from an injury, COVID on top of that as well, and he will know, and as the same with Jones as well, they will know that they're still the future of this club, and it just takes time for both of them.
I mean, you say that. I'm not 100% convinced for Curtis, yes, for sure. The thing is, Keifer, we keep seeing these rumours of Joe Gomez reportedly being moving away. We've seen Aston Villa, we've seen Real Madrid, we've seen many other fantastic big clubs coming in for what is undoubtedly a big talent. And Ben is correct to say that he is still coming back from injury. But there's a kind of an unlucky element to this here as well, because obviously he was out injured last year. Matip was out injured last year. They've both kind of come back at the same time. Matip came back a little bit first. But there's also this other fella, Konate, who's come into the mix. So it's not quite as simple as being saying, okay, just wait your turn or get his chances. It matters about the kind of minutes, not just the minutes, doesn't it?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Gomez is the one that I do worry about the most. I think Ben touched on it there about Curtis Jones, and I think he's absolutely spot on. He's played since the turn of the year, but Gomez has struggled for minutes this year, and like you say, him and Matip they never fit at the same time, so they almost like profit off one another in a sense, don't they? We saw it in the Champions League winning season. Gomez obviously did his leg at Burnley, didn't he? And then Matip came in and partnered Van Dijk for the rest of that season, and then over the course of the title winning season the following year, it was Gomez who partnered Van Dijk for most of that. So for them all to be kind of fit and firing, is great, and it's great for Klopp to have the headache. But in terms of Gomez, he must be kind of thinking now, where is my future? It's a World Cup year. We know he hasn't had the best of luck with major tournaments. He has missed a few. I think missed a World Cup, didn't he? He's not been to a major tournament with England, and he seems to, whenever he's been in contention to maybe get a starting place in the squad, or certainly be nailed on for a place in Southgate's squad, he always seems to pick up an injury. So that'll no doubt be playing on his mind. He'll only have to look at Jesse Lingard last year, what he did. He went to West Ham and kind of fired himself straight into contention, didn't he? Obviously, he didn't get into the final squad, but he was very close, wasn't he? So, yeah, I don't think anyone would have expected Van Dijk to play as many games as he has so far this season. So I think that obviously comes into it. He's been back to his best, and he has been now for a few months. There seems to be no hangover from the injury, which obviously Klopp would have been cautious about, hence why he signed Konate, hence why he kept Phillips in the summer. And Matip, again, he's another one. He's strung 2 or 3 games a week. And no one would have expected that. You would have thought it would have been 1 in, 1 out kind of thing. And then Konate, he's hit the ground running. Obviously, he had that fantastic performance at Old Trafford. So he's taken to the Premier League like a duck to water. And obviously, yes, there's been a few moments where he's been caught out, or his position has been slightly off. But on the whole, you'd say he showed really promising signs. So you think long term it would be him and Gomez, who are going to be Liverpool's future in 4 or 5 years. But how do you sell that to Gomez? How do you say, look, you're not going to play now, but in 2 years or 3 years, when Van Dijk starts to slow down, you're going to play? Because Gomez has missed enough football as it is. I think I saw the other day he's 133 Liverpool appearances, but he's missed 136 through injury. So that's just telling. He needs to get minutes in his legs, and he needs to start playing games. And obviously he's been left out of the squad for Leicester, and he was left out of the squad for Burnley. As Ben touched on, then the Champions League's got five substitutions, so he could feature on Wednesday night. But does he want to come on for the final 5 minutes? Is that any use to him? Is that any use to anybody? Obviously, Williams going out on loan means that he could play at fullback, but again, he sees himself as a central defender long term. So, playing as Trent's deputy is that any use to anyone? Probably not. So, I think there's a really interesting decision that's got to be made this summer with Joe Gomez and his future, because I'm surprised. I'm surprised he didn't push for a move in January, but I could kind of see maybe Klopp sweet talked him and said, look, it's potentially a ticking time bomb before you get minutes. Someone's going to pull up injured. But if that doesn't happen between now and May, we want Matip to stay fit. We want Van Dijk to stay fit. We want Konate to stay fit. But if that happens, it makes it hard for Gomez. So it is a worry, I do think.
This is the problem with having larger squads, and this is probably one of the reasons why Klopp has been so reluctant to do it in the past. But to continue on this road, obviously the biggest card he has in his pocket is to say, hey guys, we've still got plenty of games. We've still got 4 competitions to go in, as you mentioned before, Ben. So potentially, if Liverpool reach all 3 finals, that's 26 games. However, if they go out of all of the domestic cups, they go out of the FA Cup and the Champions League. Obviously, the League Cup were already at the final. That's 18 games. Now, obviously, that's still a lot of games, Ben. But as Keifer kind of intimated, there's game time and then there's game time. There's maybe getting 65 to 70 minutes in the FA Cup at centre-half versus maybe getting 3 minutes in injury time at right-back when we're trying to defend a lead. So not all minutes are created equal. And if those are the minutes you're always going to be getting, it does start to make an effect on the player's mentality, because once we get to the start of the season, most teams do start to play their strongest 11 in most possible games. That's how it normally goes. So there may well be more than just Gomez who's getting a bit frustrated. I think of the likes of Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, Naby, Keita. These are guys who are in contract seasons, let's not forget. So these things that maybe they had previously kind of not bother them as much, this becomes a little bit more important at times like this, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, every footballer wants to play football. Like you wouldn't be a footballer if you didn't want to play. So that is going to be of importance to them. But at the same time, I think every footballer wants to win trophies. And the fact that they're part of this Liverpool team who are competing on all 4 fronts at the moment, and you have this great momentum behind them right now, like Liverpool look quite good and quite strong heading into the League Cup final and the FA Cup and Champions League ties. I think they'll realise and they'll be content with as much of a role as they've had leading up until this point. And like you say, I think injuries will inevitably play a part with Liverpool. This is kind of a freak scenario at the moment. It hasn't happened a lot under Klopp. I think Klopp's mentioned that a few times in his press conferences as well, that this is a new problem for him, a new headache, and I don't think it will last a very long time.
It's weird though, because injuries are the thing that you can never predict when they're going to come. You have to game plan for them. And obviously last season we saw the extreme example of that. And we've kind of now safeguarded against that happening again. But we have to remember that was so extreme that it probably won't happen again. But you are right. Like, the injuries element does kind of make it so much harder to be able to say what's exactly going to happen. And it might be, I mean, you don't want to be in a situation where you're hoping for injuries, particularly within the squad. You don't want to be in a situation, for example, Simicast is just sitting there watching Robertson in training going, how's your ankle there? Did it look like he went over there? Ooh. You don't want that in getting seeping into people's minds. I'm being slightly facetious here. But Ben, you know what I'm saying here? It can be creating a problem, particularly when we get to finals. So the League Cup final, for example. Do we think Klopp's going to play his strongest 11 for that game? Obviously, he's already mentioned Kevin Kelleher is going to start in goal. But also, do you think he has a strongest 11, the Champions League finals lineup, as they used to call it?
That's a good question. I think it'll be interesting with the League Cup final, because you have someone like Takumi Minamino, for example, who didn't start the last semi-final game against Arsenal, but he was integral to the way Liverpool got to the final, really. I think he's still the top goal scorer for Liverpool, for sure, I think, in that competition. So, and then obviously he didn't even make the squad against Burnley at the weekend. So it's going to be interesting.
My intro.
Whereas you have the likes of Salah and Mane, who I don't think have featured in the League Cup yet, who are, given the fact that it's Chelsea, are probably going to start or be involved in that game. So, yeah, it's an interesting one, how Minamino will feel about it as well. We don't really know. I mean, he decided to stay at the club in January and fight for his place. And I think a lot of that, the main incentive behind that was to win a trophy at Liverpool, because I feel like he feels that he has contributed a lot this season, and in all fairness to him, he has. That's the difficult part at the moment with all of Liverpool's players. Like, if there was someone who was out of form or not doing as well, then you'd say Klopp is entitled to drop them. But at the moment, Divock Origi's doing well when he's playing. Minamino scoring goals when he's coming on. Oxlade-Chamberlain stepped up in Salah's absence. He scored 2 in the Premier League in that time. Curtis Jones is playing well when he's playing. It's a hard decision at the moment.
It is a hard decision, and these are all extremely competitive animals, so they're not going to want to give an inch to even their own teammates. And it's a difficult one for Klopp to kind of manage, Keifer, isn't it? Because we've also got the dynamic of some of the players who've been superb for Liverpool in winning all these trophies. Their place in the hierarchy is slowly beginning to be disturbed for the first time. Think of the likes of Firmino. You could almost put Mane in that category if Diaz does take off. You could almost put Jordan Henderson in that category as well. Some of what we've seen so far this season. Now, obviously, Henderson himself is a leader of this team, and Mane is clearly a leader as well. We've seen it with Senegal. But that has the potential to change the dynamic, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think at the minute it feels like Liverpool are like in a transition period. So obviously the average age of the squad is slowly getting down and down over the last couple of windows. Obviously, you look at Konate, you look at Jota, you look at Diaz, you look at the front three there, all 29. Obviously, contracts are up for debate, and who knows what will happen with them and who will sign. Obviously, we know that Liverpool want Salah to sign, but on the other two, it remains a bit blurred lines. No one really knows. I think maybe a decision with Mane might be made in the coming months, maybe just see what effect AFCON's had on him. But I think you're right as well. I think, Henderson yesterday struggled, and not just to pick him out yesterday or single him out, because I think, the conditions yesterday made it nigh on impossible to get a hold on the midfield. But like you say, there's these people who have been around for a while, and not forced out, but you can see Jota's starting more games than he did last season. Firmino's finding himself more on the bench, more as a sub player, which given how he's kind of shaped Klopp's philosophy at Liverpool is absolutely wild, and it almost does signal the start of a new era. So in terms of strongest 11, I think I'd say there's probably 2 places up for grabs. I think I'd say this season, I think Jota's done enough to dislodge Firmino. I think if you were playing a Champions League final tomorrow, I think Jota would get the nod. And then it's Mane and Diaz. Obviously, it's early days, to say Diaz has done enough to dislodge Mane. But in terms of profile, in terms of kind of Mane's kind of form over the last 18 months, you would imagine over the next 6 to 12 months that he would find himself playing second fiddle to Diaz. And then the midfield, it feels like Thiago and Fabinho have got that nailed 2 out of the 3 spots, even though Thiago's, 30 or 31 himself. And it feels like it is Henderson's spot on the right of the 3 that, is potentially up for grabs, between the likes of Harvey Elliott, Oxlade-Chamberlain, Curtis Jones, even Naby Keita. So as you say, they're all, entering a pivotal moment in the kind of contracts. I think Oxen and Naby are up next summer. So, we could see over the coming weeks and months that if Liverpool do want to keep Naby Keita and sign him down to a new deal and even convince him, he might not be convinced from his time at Liverpool so far. So it could be that, he makes up the 3 with Fabinho and Thiago. So it's certainly an interesting moment in time for Liverpool, because I think there's been so much, made of a rebuild and the job that people have to do after Klopp. But we're seeing it now right before our eyes. We're seeing it take place, which is great, because it means that, it won't end up something like what happened at United, where you kind of get to the end of a manager's spell and you've got players who are 30, 34, whatever, 33, 32, and you have to clear it all out at once. But if you kind of do it over a few windows, it does obviously make it a hell of a lot easier. But yeah, it certainly is, like as Ben pointed out to, it certainly is a difficult time, to kind of promise minutes, and it also, I think it goes back to what Klopp has, what has he said to the likes of Minamino. Obviously, we know that he's starting Keller in the final, but if he said to Minamino and Origi at the start of the season, you will play whoever we come up against, then that's a different issue. But if he's just said, we're going to take it round by round, see who we get, I think he's entitled to go with his strongest 11 in the final, because at the end of the day, you've got to be ruthless to win trophies. I think the goalkeeper, obviously Kelleher, we know he's good enough to deputise for Alisson. He was superb at Chelsea at the start of 2022, wasn't he? But obviously, the drop-off between maybe Minamino, Origi, and Salah, Jota, and Mane is huge. So I think you've maybe in this instance, it might be that Klopp has to be mean to be nice kind of thing, to kind of get the trophy in.
And that's the thing. We see him as the smiling, happy Klopp who can occasionally get grumpy with the wrong people if they ask the wrong questions. But he has to be hard and ruthless within his own dressing room, Ben, as well. So we don't know what he said to the likes of Minamino, particularly as you mentioned before. He was thinking about moving in January. Maybe he said to him, no, you'll get games. And maybe he's had to change his mind about a few things. But each of these players have got their own individual ambitions, even within the team structure. And Liverpool's mantra for a long time has been, your individual honours will come through team achievement. And to a large extent, that's been proven correct. Obviously, Van Dijk, Salah have had lots of awards over the course of their time in Liverpool, Jordan Henderson as well. But Salah, we mentioned AFCON earlier, he was desperate to get that title as a missing piece of his Ballon d'Or puzzle. So he's going to be trying to channel all of that into a desire to have an even more spectacular club season to try and make up the balance. So he's going to be going all out for the Golden Boot. He's going to be going all out for Player of the Year. Now, at the moment, he's clear in the Golden Boot. He's probably clear in the Player of the Year as well. So that's not a problem. But what happens if someone starts catching him? And for example, we've got a Champions League semi-final and there's a league game beforehand. Klopp wants to rest him for the Champions League semi-final. He wants that Golden Boot. And what happens if the guy chasing him just happens to be his teammate, who is playing in that particular game, by the way?
I mean, I don't know. It's a massive hypothetical scenario.
I mean, it's a hypothetical scenario, but you can see a world where Jota starts catching him, and Mo really wants that Golden Boot. Don't
Absolutely.
let his smile fool you. And it might become a situation where Klopp is going to have to say, I'm going to have to save your legs, because look at all of the extra time periods he played in AFCON. He's come straight back, but there is going to have to be a time at some point in the season where Klopp's going to have to look after him. And we've seen that Mo doesn't always take kindly to that, does he?
And that's absolutely. I mean, yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. Either way, what happens? Jota is 4 goals away from him in the Premier League goal scoring charts. So yeah, not too far away now. I think with Salah, he always wants to play, and we haven't really seen him being rotated ever since he's been at Liverpool. The only time we saw him come off the bench recently is when he came back from AFCON, and Klopp was cautious about starting him. So I don't think I worry about Klopp dropping him too much. I can see Klopp dropping Jota more, just because.
I mean, it's resting, very much resting, not dropping. Very different.
Resting. Yeah, resting. Well, exactly, and I think the thing with that is in Salah's favour as well is with Jota, you have Firmino who can come in, or potentially even Minamino, or on the left now you have Diaz or Jota who can drift out to the left in place of Mane. Whereas with Salah, we don't really have anyone who can play that right wing slot very well. Anyway, I mean, fair play to Oxlade-Chamberlain for scoring 2 goals in there when he was playing there in the Premier League, but I don't know, on a consistent basis, I think Salah is still by far and away the best option. Whereas
Ox will tell you he can do a job though, won't he? That's the thing. He'll be like, "Hey, I've already done it. I've got 2 goals in the pocket. Let me at him." And I mean, he's that kind of jokey, jovial kind of guy who will probably turn it into a joke anyway. But there'll be some truth in it. I mean, we've seen, Keifer, other teams have fallen foul of this. I mean, like I said before, there is a reason Klopp likes a small squad, because I'm thinking particularly of the history of Chelsea in pretty much all of the last 20 years, but also Manchester City as well. If you think back to last summer, you had Raheem Sterling, Bernardo Silva, Aymeric Laporte, all unhappy with their minutes, all looking to leave. Now, obviously, none of those 3 did leave, and at the moment, they're probably quite glad that they didn't. But let's fast forward to the end of this season now and look at this Liverpool squad. If some of them didn't get the minutes that they're after, particularly as the contract negotiations may well still be going on as we speak, do you see more of them maybe saying, I need to move on, it's time for me to go now?
Yeah, 100%, because as Ben said, all footballers want to play, don't they? That is the bottom line. That's the basics of it. There'll be a few who are, in the last 18 months of their contract who, have got decisions to make, and pretty big ones, in the likes of Firmino and Mane. It's probably going to be either, if they stay at Liverpool, it's probably going to be their last big contract, or they're going to go elsewhere, somewhere in Europe, you'd imagine, and try and get that big contract somewhere else. I look at the likes of Oxlade-Chamberlain and Naby Keita, obviously both expire next summer. I'd be very surprised if both of them stay. So I think you're going to lose one there. We've touched on Joe Gomez as well. Obviously, his contract's 24, but still, he's not played for the best part of 9 months on a consistent basis, and so he's got a decision to make. So as you said, you could be looking at something similar to Manchester City, and where you have got 3 or 4 players who have been kind of linchpins in the side. That they are looking to move on because the game time isn't there, and like you said, Klopp tends to operate with a smaller squad. Liverpool don't tend to do a lot of business in one window. It's over a gradual period of time, because as we've seen now with a fully fit squad, you've got 4 Premier League standard players who could do a job for anywhere from probably 6th onwards. They're not getting in the squads, and so there's plenty of decisions to make. But the same time of that is, like you say, there's injuries, and I think last year would have really scarred Klopp and Liverpool. I think they will have had to take that cautious approach, because if you had said that at the start of last season, you'd lose all 3 centre halves and you'd be playing Jordan Henderson and Fabinho, and you'd loan a lad in from the bottom of the Bundesliga, and Reece Williams and Nat Phillips are going to start a handful of games in the Premier League together, you would have been like, you're absolutely mad, but it happened. Yeah. So I think you've got to be skeptic of the amount of games, the amount of minutes that people are playing, and the risk of that is injuries. So yeah, over the next 18 months, there's a lot of decisions to be made at Liverpool, and players' futures, and like I said, the other side of that is that Liverpool can recoup some money that some of the outlay that they have put into those players, and that can help strengthen other areas. As Ben touched on there, you'd probably look at a right-sided forward is probably the only weakness at the minute. I know Jota's done a stint there, Oxlade-Chamberlain has, but in terms of like someone who can come in and kind of replicate the same play style as Salah, and also replicate, not the numbers obviously, because I don't think there's anyone who could do that, but almost make it, as Ben said, what we've got with Mane and Diaz now, where you've got 2 comfortable options that you're happy to drop in and out. If you have got a Champions League semi-final that you need to win on a Wednesday, but you've also got a game that you must win in the Premier League on a Sunday, you're happy to play one on one and one on the other. So I think if losing some of the players from elsewhere in the squad, losing the bulk, cutting it down, that could help Liverpool invest elsewhere.
I think that's a very fair point as well. We've seen that something that FSG do kind of stick to, that there needs to be as much notice on the out tray as the in tray, I think is fair to say. Now, this has been a very widely hypothetical show, and I'm sure that there are some of you out there going, you lot are mad. These guys love each other. We've seen it for the last 3 or 4 seasons. They're not going to get upset with someone else getting in the team ahead of them. They're going to be pleased. They're going to know they can come off the bench and make a difference. These guys are mentality monsters for a reason, Ben, aren't they? And we have to bear in mind that Klopp does pay attention to the attitude and mentality when he's finding these players. So you could say we are a little bit better protected than some of those other teams I mentioned.
I think so as well. And Klopp's sort of, he is someone who's very good as a man manager, you know. He that's been highlighted by a lot of people. He is good. He's a human person. He can deal well with human beings, and that's been present in his press conferences and the way he handles everything on and off the pitch. So that's why I wouldn't worry too much in terms of the harmony. You also have the likes of Henderson and Milner in there who are players who, you know, who are very good at helping the younger players. For example, the likes of Elliott and Jones and Salah as well has been particularly good with that. And they will give them advice and guidance about, you know, what to do when you are frustrated and how to deal with those things. And, you know, if at the end of the year, someone like Chamberlain or Keita does want to leave, I don't think it's the end of the world for Liverpool. Like Keith said, we can hopefully recoup some money from them. In the case of Chamberlain, particularly, I think he's going to be turning 29 this year. So, you know, he is someone who, you know, Liverpool could trade for a potentially younger player who could be a sort of long-term option for Klopp. And I think it is that if Liverpool are going to get some money for those kind of players, that this is the last opportunity, not just because their contract is running out, but also in terms of their age and profile.
Well, this is a very crucial time for a lot of people going into, particularly this summer. I think there's going to be a lot of movement this summer with players reaching the final year of deals. So there is lots to consider for Jurgen Klopp. But as we have said at the top of the show, options broadly is the better way to go about it. The way to solve these problems, the best way perhaps, is to just go out and win 4 trophies. Then either way, if you end up leaving, you're leaving a champion. And if you're staying, you get to do it all again next year. Now, Ben, Keifer, we're going to go now, but we are going to get to do this all again next week. So thank you for today. Thank you all for listening as ever. We'll see you again soon.